The door swings open hard, and the rain follows her straight in. Nyra Cade doesn't run. She never runs. She walks, steady, deliberate, like someone who has learned that panic is a luxury she cannot afford. Her yellow apron is soaked clean through. Her white uniform shirt pressed flat against her skin by the weight of the downpour she had just walked out of. And in her arms, held tight against her chest, is a boy. Small. Still. Breathing in shallow, uneven pulls that don't sound right. Her younger brother, Elion. 7 years old. Running a fever that has been climbing for 3 days straight with no sign of stopping. She carries him past the hostess stand. Past the row of red vinyl booths where customers sit with their menus and their ordinary Tuesday afternoons. Past the coffee station, where 2 coworkers freeze mid-pour and stare at her like she just walked in from another planet. Nobody speaks. Nobody moves a single step in her direction. She pushes the storage room door open with her shoulder, lays Elion down carefully on the folded tablecloths she had arranged there the night before, not tonight, not in a panic, but planned, quietly, the way Nyra does everything, and she tucks her uniform jacket around his small shoulders. Presses the back of her hand flat against his forehead. Still burning.
Hi friends, has anyone ever shown up for someone they loved, even when everything around them said don't? Drop your answer in the comments right now. And if you are new here, please hit subscribe and turn on your notifications bell, because what happens next story is till the very last second.
Nyra straightens up. Smooths her apron with both hands. 6 tables are waiting. A double shift she cannot afford to lose. Medication she cannot afford to buy if she does. She checks Elion's breathing one more time, then steps back out into the noise of the restaurant, as absolutely nothing happened. 3 booths down, near the window that faces the rain-soaked parking lot, a man sits completely still. No phone on the table. No newspaper. Just a cup of black coffee and 2 very quiet eyes that have been watching this restaurant for the last 40 minutes without blinking much. His name is Orson Vale. Nobody in that building knows it yet. And what nobody in that building is ready for, is that the quiet thing that just happened in that storage room is about to set off a chain of events that will reach far beyond one job, far beyond one restaurant, and far beyond one rainy Tuesday night. Nobody is ready. Not even Nyra. Nyra Cade hit the kitchen floor on a Thursday morning in August when Nyra was 9 years old. No warning. No dramatic build-up. She was cracking eggs at the stove and then she simply wasn't standing anymore. The eggs hit the linoleum before she did. Nyra was in the hallway when she heard it, that specific sound of a body going down in a house where there was nobody else to help, and she ran into the kitchen and found her grandmother face up between the stove and the refrigerator, eyes half open, breathing but not responding. Nyra called out. Called again. Nobody came because there was nobody to come. So she sat down on the floor beside her grandmother, took her hand, and talked to her in a low voice while the ambulance took 17 minutes to arrive. 17 minutes is a very long time when you are 9 years old and the person you love most in the world has stopped answering you. Nyra spent all 17 of those minutes making herself stay calm. Not because she wasn't afraid. But because falling apart wasn't going to help Odette. That morning planted something in her that no amount of time ever fully pulled out. After that, she was the one who got up first. The one who checked the door locks and sorted the medications into the little weekly tray and made sure Elion had eaten something before she ever touched her own plate. Not because anyone assigned it to her. Because she had seen what happened when nobody did, and she had decided, quietly, without ceremony, that she was going to be the person who showed up. Odette used to cup her face in both hands and say the same sentence every single time. Even when you have nothing, you still have the power to protect someone. Nyra never stopped believing it. Clarice Van Tun grew up in a completely different kind of house. Her father, Dex Van Tun, ran a tight home in Dayton, Ohio, 3 kids, 1 income, no room for softness and no patience for excuses. He managed a warehouse on the south end of town and brought the same energy through the front door every evening. Dinner at 6. Homework finished before the table was cleared. And the one rule that sat above everything else in that house: never hesitate. Because hesitation is how you fall behind. And falling behind, Dex Van Ton believed with everything in him, was permanent. Clarice learned to manage before she ever learned to feel. She learned to draw boundaries before she ever learned to question whether the line was in the right place. By the time she was running her first restaurant at 31, she ran it exactly the way her father had run everything. Clean. Controlled. No exceptions. Both women had been shaped by hard mornings and harder lessons. Both of them had carried something heavy since childhood. Both of them believed they were right. And both of them were about to find out what happens when two beliefs that cannot coexist end up in the same room. The storage room at Carver's diner smelled like bleach, cardboard, and the faint ghost of old cooking oil baked into the walls. Nyra had been hiding Elion in there for 11 days. Not carelessly. Not in desperation. Carefully. The way she did everything. She had cleared the back corner behind the bulk supply shelf, the one where paper towel cases stacked 3 high and nobody ever went past, and she had brought a folded blanket on her first night and laid it flat underneath the bottom shelf. Small flashlight. A bag of crackers. A cup with a lid. On the third night she had added a folded sweatshirt for a pillow. By day 4, Elion understood the rules without being told twice. Stay behind the shelf. Flashlight off unless you really need it. If the door opens, pull the blanket up and don't move. Don't cough loud. 7 years old. Already practicing how to disappear. The arrangement had started the night their neighbor Miss Renata Okafor got a call from her sister in Memphis. Family emergency. No warning. She was packed and gone by Wednesday afternoon, and Nyra's shift started at 5:30. The daycare center closed at 6. There was no one else. Their mother had been out of the picture since Elion was 3, not dead, just gone in a slow way that is somehow worse than gone. Their father existed only as a name neither of them ever said out loud. So Nyra built a plan with what she had. Not a good plan. Not a lasting plan. Just a bridge she could stand on while she figured out the next thing. The problem was that the bridge was now cracking. Elion had been sick since day 6. Low fever first, the kind she could manage with the children's acetaminophen she bought with the last folded bills from her apron pocket. She gave him the right dose every 4 hours, exactly the way the box said. It helped for a while. Brought it down enough that he could sleep. But by day 11 the fever had stopped coming down. On a Tuesday mid-shift, she slipped out of the dining room between table 4's appetizer order and table 7's check, pushed the storage room door open, and crouched down beside him in the dark. Elion was curled tight on the tablecloths, his breathing coming through his mouth in a way that sounded shallow and wet. His skin was damp. His face had gone pale in a way that tightened something deep in her chest. She pressed her lips to his forehead. Too hot. Far too hot. She had to get him out. She had to get him to a clinic tonight, no matter what it cost her. But if she walked off shift, Clarice would flag it. And if Clarice followed the flag, she would come back to check, and then everything Nyra had held together for 11 days with nothing but quiet and careful planning would come apart at once. She stood up slowly. Looked at him for 3 more seconds. Then she heard the storage room door push open behind her. And a voice she recognized said one word. Nyra. Deja Simmons stood in the storage room doorway and took in everything in under 4 seconds. The blanket. The crackers. The cup with the lid. The small boy curled in the back corner, who turned his face toward the light with slow, heavy eyes. She looked at all of it, and then she looked at Nyra standing between her and the boy like a door that was not going to open. Deja's face went through something complicated, surprise first, then recognition, then something that settled into an expression Nyra had no word for. Not judgment. Not pity. Something older than both. Then Deja pulled the door closed behind her, walked back to her station, and said nothing to anyone. That was last night. Tonight the rain was heavier. Elion's breathing was worse. And the rubber doorstop that Nyra had been using to keep the storage room door from drifting open, the small orange wedge she had been sliding under the frame since day 3, was gone. Moved. Maybe kicked aside by accident, maybe by someone who had no idea what it was holding in place. The door sat open 3 inches. The dinner rush moved through Carver's diner the way it always did on a Tuesday, plates stacking at the pass-through, someone calling a modification on table 11, the low steady percussion of a kitchen that never fully slows down. The smell of fried onions and hot butter moved through the air in thick rolling waves. Everything looked exactly like normal. But Orson Vale had been sitting in booth 3 for over an hour now, and nothing about him looked like a man who had stopped in for dinner. He had come in off a detour. His driver had rerouted them 2 miles north because of a washed-out road, and Orson had seen the lights of the diner through the rain and made the call to wait it out inside. That had been the plan. Sit. Have coffee. Let the weather pass. But Orson Vale had spent 23 years building things by watching what other people walked past. Waiting rooms. Parking structures. Crowded lobbies. He had a habit of going completely still in ordinary places and watching the way people moved, what they carried, what they shielded, what they kept checking on even when they thought no one was looking. And for the last hour, he had watched Nyra Cade. The way she moved between tables with everything managed and nothing revealed. The way she touched the storage room door twice without going in. The way her hand went to her apron pocket every few minutes and then pulled back without taking anything out. She was managing something enormous under the surface. He didn't know what it was. But he knew the posture of someone holding a weight that was almost too heavy. Then, cutting clean through the clatter of the dinner rush, came a sound from the back of the restaurant. A child's cough. Thin. Wet. Coming from behind the door that was sitting open 3 inches. Every sound in Nyra's body stopped. Across the dining room, at the host stand, Clarice Van Tun raised her head. Her eyes went straight to the storage room door. And she moved. Clarice walked toward the storage room the way she walked toward every problem, no hurry, no noise, like a woman who had already decided the outcome before she got there. She pushed the door all the way open. The hallway light cut straight across the room and landed on Elion. 7 years old. Curled on a stack of folded tablecloths with a jacket pulled up to his chin, his chest lifting and dropping in small, unsteady movements. He blinked against the sudden brightness. Too weak to sit up. Nyra stepped in front of him. Not to argue. Not to explain. Just, there. Body between her brother and whatever was coming. The entire back half of the restaurant had gone quiet. 2 servers stood frozen at the pass-through window. Trayvon, the dishwasher, had turned off the spray nozzle without realizing it. Even the kitchen noise seemed to drop back, like the building itself had held a breath. Clarice looked at the blanket. At the crackers. At the small cup sitting beside the folded sweatshirt that served as a pillow. She took the whole picture in the way someone reads a document, fully, completely, without any visible reaction. Then she looked at Nyra. How long, she said. Not a question. Not yet. A measurement. 11 days, Nyra said. Not an apology. A fact. Clarice's expression didn't change. You brought a minor into a commercial food service facility. That is a health code violation. That is a liability issue. That is a direct breach of employee conduct policy, which you signed when you were hired. She paused. All 3. He didn't have anywhere else. 5 words. Flat. Clear. Not begging. Not performing. The room absorbed them in complete silence. Clarice looked at the boy one more time. Something moved across her face, fast, almost invisible, gone before anyone could name it. Then her jaw set. Her shoulders leveled. And she turned toward the pass-through window where the two servers were still standing completely still. Someone start her final check. This is the moment people still argue about. The speed of it. The calm of it. No raised voice. No visible satisfaction. Just a decision made and executed before the room could react. And if you have ever watched someone do the right thing get walked out the door for it, drop it in the comments right now, because this story is for you. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do that right now and come back for every chapter. Now, back to Nyra. Nyra did not cry. She did not ask again. She bent down slowly, gathered Elion up into both arms, his head falling heavy against her shoulder, his small fingers loosely gripping the front of her apron like a child who trusts the person holding him even when everything around him is falling, and she stood up straight. She looked at Clarice one time. Not with anger. Not with any performance of it. With something quieter. Something settled and very old. Then she walked. Past Trayvon and his nozzle. Past the two servers at the window, who looked away before she reached them. Past the kitchen line and the host stand and the red vinyl booths. Past booth 3, where a man in a plain gray jacket sat with both hands flat on the table and a cup of coffee that had gone cold 30 minutes ago. He watched her walk through that door. He watched the rain close around her. He sat completely still for 11 more seconds. Then Orson Vale reached into the inside pocket of his jacket, removed a small card, and set it face down on the table beside his cup. He stood. Buttoned his jacket. And nobody in Carver's diner that night had any idea that the man who had just walked out the door owned the company that owned the building they were all standing in. Nobody knew. But they were about to find out. The rain didn't stop when Nyra walked out. It came down harder, like the sky had been waiting for her to step outside before it let everything loose. She had no umbrella. She hadn't brought one in because she had planned to finish her shift at 11, walk to the bus stop on Mercer, and be home before midnight. That was the plan. Plans had stopped matching somewhere around the moment Clarice said to start her final check. Elion's weight pulled at her left arm. She shifted him higher against her chest. He made a small sound, not quite a word, not quite a cry, and pressed his face against the side of her neck. His skin was too warm and too damp at the same time, and every few steps his breathing caught in that shallow, wet way that made her jaw tighten. She kept walking. The parking lot lights carved yellow lines across the wet pavement. A car pulled out without looking, and she stepped back once, then kept moving. No one followed her out. No one held the door. Behind the restaurant windows, shadows moved against the light, people returning to their tables, their meals, their regular Tuesday nights. She didn't look back. Half a block down, she stopped under the narrow overhang of a closed laundromat and shifted Elion into both arms, pressing him against her chest until his breathing settled into something more even. His eyes were closed. He was too tired to keep them open. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out her phone. The screen cracked across one corner. 41% battery. She scrolled to the clinic number she had already saved 3 days ago, already knowing this moment was coming, and pressed call. 4 rings. A recording. Closed until 8 a.m. She lowered the phone slowly. The rain tapped hard against the overhang above her and dripped cold off the edge onto her shoes. A receipt from her last table had stuck to the wet sidewalk near her feet. She didn't bend down to pick it up. She just stood there, holding her brother, watching the water move across the pavement in thin fast rivers going nowhere in particular. What she didn't know was that 60 seconds ago, a man had walked back to a black car in that same parking lot. And he hadn't left yet. 3 weeks passed, and Carver's diner stayed the same on the outside. Same smell of onions and coffee. Same red vinyl booths. Same Tuesday rush. Clarice still arrived at 4:45, same as always, car in the same spot, same navy blazer, same clipboard under her arm. She ran pre-shift the same way she always did. Checked temperatures. Reviewed covers. Initialed the opening log. Everything normal. Except on the Monday of the third week, a customer review appeared on the company's internal feedback portal. Not on a public site. Internal. Which meant whoever submitted it had access to a corporate account. The review was 3 paragraphs. Measured language. No insults, no heat. It described the staff culture at the Mercer Street location as one that prioritized rule enforcement over human judgment. It cited no specific incident. It asked no specific question. It simply noted what it had observed and submitted it to the regional oversight team for review. Clarice didn't see it. She wasn't supposed to. On the Wednesday of that same week, a second submission came through. This one was a formal inquiry, not a complaint, an inquiry, from the Corporate Operations Division requesting a review of the Mercer Street location's employee welfare protocols. The language was careful. Professional. The kind of language that doesn't sound urgent until you read it twice and realize the question underneath it has teeth. The regional manager, a man named Curtis Phelps, read it on his lunch break and sat with it for a long time. On Friday, an anonymous report appeared in the HR system flagging a pattern of employee terminations at the Mercer Street location, 6 and 14 months, and requesting documentation on the exit circumstances for each one. Curtis Phelps made 3 phone calls before he finished his coffee. None of them were to Clarice. Somebody was building something quietly. Gathering. Not rushing. Laying one piece down, then the next, the way you build a case when you are not interested in noise, only in outcome. And somewhere across the city, in a clinic on Dwight Avenue that a stranger had called ahead to on a rainy Tuesday night, a 7-year-old boy named Nyra Cade was finally sleeping without a fever for the first time in 2 weeks. His sister sat in the plastic chair beside his bed and stared at the ceiling. She had no idea that a name was moving quietly through corporate hallways. A name that was almost ready to arrive. The email landed in Curtis Phelps' inbox on a Thursday morning at 7:52, and it did not look like a bomb. It looked like a calendar invite. Subject line, Operational Review, Mercer Street. Single attendee request. 30 minutes. The sender was listed under a holding company name that Curtis didn't immediately recognize, VRC Capital Operations, which meant nothing to him until he typed it into the company database and the screen returned a result that made him set his coffee down and sit very still for almost a full minute. VRC Capital owned a 14% stake in the restaurant group. And the primary shareholder of VRC Capital was Orson Vale. Curtis accepted the meeting in under 10 seconds. Orson arrived without an assistant. Without a team. Without any of the things that people in his position usually arrive with to remind everyone in the room who they are. He wore a plain charcoal jacket and dark slacks and carried nothing but a slim folder, which he set on the conference table and did not open for the first 8 minutes of the meeting. He asked Curtis 3 questions. How are exit decisions documented at the location level? Who reviews them before they are finalized? And whether the company had any existing support structure for employees facing personal emergencies outside of work. Curtis answered honestly, which took less time than he expected because the honest answer to all 3 questions was essentially, not well, 1 person, and no. Orson nodded once after each answer. No reaction. No judgment in his face. He wrote 2 lines of notes in a small notebook and then closed it. Then he opened the folder. Inside were 5 pages. Orson slid them across the table without a word. Curtis picked them up and read the first page. Then he read it again. It was a proposed framework, an internal employee support protocol for the entire restaurant group. Emergency medical assistance. Crisis housing referrals. A direct line review process for termination decisions made during documented personal emergencies. He had not asked for it. It was already written. Curtis looked up from the pages. Orson Vale was looking back at him with an expression that was not a threat and was not a request. It was something more final than both. "I'd like this implemented before the quarter closes," Orson said. He never mentioned Nyra's name. Not once. Not yet. The letter from Human Resources arrived in Clarice Vanton's email on a Monday morning at 9 a.m. sharp. It was not a termination notice. That was the first thing she noticed. It was a reassignment, effective in 30 days, to a regional training and development role, based out of the corporate office on the north side. The language was respectful and thorough and left absolutely no room for argument. Attached to it was a mandatory enrollment confirmation for a 2-week employee welfare and leadership accountability course beginning the following month. Clarice read it once. Closed her laptop. Opened it again and read it a second time. She sat in her office, the small one at the back of Carver's diner, the one she had kept exactly the same for 4 years, and she looked at the wall across from her desk where she had taped a single index card 6 years ago that said, in her own handwriting, "If you hesitate, you lose." She looked at it for a long time. 2 days into the leadership course, the instructor, a calm woman named Dr. Phyllis Garner, showed a series of incident reports to the group and asked one question: where does policy end and judgment begin? No right answer given. Just the question, sitting in the middle of the room. Clarice didn't answer out loud. But that night she went back to her hotel room and pulled up the internal camera footage from the Mercer Street location, access she still had for 2 more weeks, and she found the timestamp from a Tuesday 3 weeks ago. She watched herself walk toward the storage room. She watched the door open. She watched a woman step in front of a sick child. She watched herself speak. She watched Nyra Cade carry her brother out into the rain without a single backward glance. For the first time in a long time, Clarice Vanton did not feel like someone who had made the right call. She closed the footage. Opened a blank document. Sat there for 11 minutes without typing anything. Then she typed one sentence. And what she wrote in that document was the beginning of something she hadn't expected. Something that would reach Nyra Cade in a way no one in that restaurant had thought possible. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon while Nyra was folding laundry at the kitchen table. Elion was on the couch behind her, watching cartoons with the volume low, his breathing easy and clean in the way it hadn't been for almost a month. She had found a new position, a day shift at a grocery distribution center 2 miles from home, steadier hours, better pay, no double shifts. It wasn't perfect. Nothing was. But it was solid ground, and solid ground was something she understood how to stand on. The number on her phone screen was a Chicago area code she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer. Nyra Cade. A man's voice. Unhurried. "My name is Orson Vale. I don't think you know who I am." She said nothing for a moment. "I don't." "That's all right. I was in booth 3 the night you were let go from Carver's. I had cold coffee and a gray jacket. You walked past me on your way out." She remembered the booth. She had never looked directly at the man sitting in it. Orson Vale didn't apologize for what Clarice had done. He didn't explain the reviews, the inquiries, the framework, the reassignment. He said none of it. He just asked her one question. What would have helped you that night? Not money, not a title. What would have actually helped? Nyra set the shirt in her hand down on the table. She thought about Miss Renata leaving with no notice. About the clinic recording at midnight. About 6 exits in 14 months. About every person who had ever held a plan together with nothing but quiet and careful thinking, while the people around them looked the other way. A place to call, she said. One number. Someone who picks up and helps you figure out the next step. Not a hotline. A real person. Orson Vale wrote it down. 4 months later, every restaurant in the group launched a small laminated card behind every employee's time clock. One number. Available 24 hours. Staffed by trained crisis coordinators. Free for every employee from day one. They named it the Elion Protocol. Nyra never asked them to. She found out when a coworker from the distribution center mentioned it. Her cousin worked for the restaurant group and had used the line after a car accident left her without childcare for 2 weeks. Whoever started that, the coworker said, probably saved her job. Nyra said nothing. Just nodded. And went back to work. Not every story ends with someone standing in the spotlight receiving a reward. Some of the most important things that have ever happened in this world are set in motion by a person who simply refused to walk out of a room without first making sure someone was okay. Nyra Cade never made headlines. She never asked for anything beyond what she needed to protect the people she loved. And because of one quiet, rainy Tuesday night, because she showed up when it would have been so much easier not to, thousands of people now have somewhere to turn when the walls close in. The tree that survives the storm doesn't announce it. It just grows differently after. If this story moved something in you, if it reminded you of someone who held things together when they had every reason to let go, share it right now with that person. Leave a comment below and tell us the name of someone in your life who has been a Nyra. This community was built for stories like this one, and your story matters here. Subscribe and turn on your notifications so you never miss another story from this channel, because every week we bring you something that reminds you what people are truly made of. And you do not want to miss a single one.